Hey everyone, it is Jamie Jo right here at Madlet Musings, and I have with me Amanda G. Stevens. Hey Amanda.
Hello, Jamie.
I'm happy to have you here. This is exciting.
It's very exciting to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Not a problem. So readers should know this by now that when they're listening to my podcast, I always come on and I'm like, I should have hit the record button like a half an hour ago because we just had a great conversation. But okay, first let's start with this. Introduce yourself. So help us know who Amanda G. Stevens is and your secret persona as well.
Oh, yes, my secret persona. Okay. So, my name is Amanda G. Stevens. I write in multiple genres, hence the secret persona. And under my real name, including the middle initial, which you'll have to use if you want to find my books, because there are multiple Amanda Stevenses writing in the world. Under my real name, I write Christian speculative fiction. I have a complete dystopian series that's out, and I also have a series that is contemporary fantasy. So it's set in the real world, and the characters are very old, and they stopped aging about a century ago, and they essentially cannot die. So lots of speculative elements in what my real name fiction is about.
Right.
And then I am also under a pen name, and my pen name is Charlotte Vane, Vane. And under that pen name, I am writing paranormal romance. Those do not have an explicit faith element, but they are closed door. So clean reading, just without the specific Christian story thread.
Right. And okay, so let's go there because I want to go there. So
I'm here to go there.
We're going to go there. We're going to go there really fast because Jamie's just diving in at the deep end and I didn't even plug my nose. Okay, so I have logged on. I'm going to be honest, and readers might be like, what? But I enjoy a good vampire story or a good werewolf, like those types of movies even. I really have fun watching. It's all that. The problem is when I go to find these books and read them, the plot is essentially not closed door. Let's just say that. And pretty graphic. So I've actually not done a lot of reading in this genre because of that. So for anyone listening, you know, there's almost like within the inspirational market, like paranormal romance. Oh, that's got to be extremely graphic or, you know, whatever. So take us where your thought process went when you decided to write, I love it, join the wolf pack, respect the vampires, and invest in their happily ever afters. That's like your tagline. That's cool.
Yes.
I love it.
So how I got there, it's really interesting because I have been wanting to write werewolves and vampires pretty much since I've been writing since first grade. I have known I was a writer my entire life long, and I've never stopped. Like I've been writing all the time since first grade. So, there have always been these things that I wanted to write that I knew I never would get to, especially like I knew in the Christian market vampires were not going to fly. Like I knew that. Everybody knows that, you know? So I just had in my head, well, you're never going to get to write those. Or if you do, it'll be like something you write only for yourself. And And I was mostly fine with that. But then I really was having I had a lot of big life transitions in 2021, 2021 would be circa 2021. I moved to a new state, all kinds of stuff happened. And my fourth book in the Immortals series, which is called the No Less Days series, it just was not coming together. I was not able to like just push through and write like I had always been able to do. And my best friend was like, why don't you try a romance? And I said, because they would be terrible. I would be a terrible romance writer. I can't write romance. What are you talking about? And she was like, you don't believe in yourself enough to do it, but you could. Like, you could do it. If you ever wanted to, you could do it and they would be good.
Yeah.
And so I started like a thought experiment with her, and she went
Okay.
down the subgenre list. She was like throwing them at me. Historical. And I was like, nope, I would make a mistake and hate myself forever. I would make an anachronism and I'd never get over the anachronism. I was like, I can never write historical. And she was
That's
like,
funny.
okay, not historical, suspense. And I was like, no, that sounds kind of boring. And she was like, okay. So she was like, rom-com. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
no, I'm not funny enough to write a rom-com. And she was like, whatever. And kept going. Like, she went all the way down. And then she said paranormal. And I was like, I could write my wolfies. And she was like, yeah. And I knew. I was like,
let's just
that's
stop
it.
right there.
Yeah.
I could write my wolfies. That's
Yeah.
like a t-shirt. You have to get that made, brand it, and all of your fans will buy it. Like, I could read my wolfies. I could
Yeah.
write my wolfies.
Yes.
There you go.
So
Okay.
I actually had this moment of excitement that I knew if I was ever going to do a romance, it had to be a paranormal.
Okay.
And so I started creating the story world, the lore of the story world, which is my second favorite part of writing. My favorite part is creating the characters and giving them all the little individual quirks and personality and backstory, and everything to do with character creation is my favorite. And they really just show up in my head and start talking. And I just I love that. It's the reason I write. But secondarily to that, I love creating story world lore. And so my dystopian books have their own lore. My immortal characters, my No Less Days series, they have their own lore about, you know, what it is to be immortal. How do their bodies work? How do they die if they do? Like, all that stuff. I've always been a lore like nerd, essentially. And so I started creating my own werewolf lore and vampire lore, and I haven't stopped creating it yet. Like, I'm still working on it.
So fun.
Yeah, and for my wolves, there's a little bit of a tie to some of the actual werewolf lore. Like, they do shift under the full moon.
Okay.
A lot of the paranormal stuff, you'll see the wolf shifter. They're just wolf shifters. But mine are traditional werewolves in the sense that the full moon does affect them. And I think that goes back to the fact that even when I was like 10 years old, I just thought that The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr., was a really cool movie. So I've just always been into that stuff. And like, the other one that I liked when I was a kid was Dracula with Bela Lugosi. I thought that was also a really cool movie. And I've read the original Dracula, and I've, read Frankenstein. Like, I've just always been a nerd about all of this.
Yeah.
So getting to do it in the context of a romance with all the wolf pack and everything, I'm just eating it up. I'm having a lot of fun.
That is so much fun. And it's so much fun too that there's something out there that people like me can read and not have to like close my eyes and wince every other page.
Yeah. They're a clean read, essentially.
Yeah. That's really cool. So, okay, I have to tell you, because you mentioned the full moon and the werewolf.
Yeah.
So I've always, like, as a little kid, like, those things didn't, like, vampires, that stuff never scared me. I remember when I was like,
scary.
I think I was 5, my mom, I shouldn't even admit this out loud, but she's gone. She's no longer with us, so I can out her. But she would watch Dark Shadows, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I would eat it up. I was this little girl, and I was eating this up. And then for whatever reason, our pastor used it in an illustration in a sermon as this really awful show that Christians shouldn't be watching. And my mom was like, and I'm letting my 5-year-old watch this. And I remember going to my room and crying because she said we weren't going to watch Dark Shadows anymore. Like, I need my vampire.
I'm so sorry.
But then the other thing was, I love the werewolves, right? And so, okay, here's the story I was originally going to tell. I'm from Wisconsin, and we bow hunt here. I know not everybody's a hunter and not everybody agrees with it, but I was bow hunting, and I was out in my tree stand, and you stay out until the last light, and there's like a cutoff time, and you can't shoot after that because they want to make sure you're getting a shot that the deer is not going to be left wounded. Saw no deer, took no shots. Don't worry. Everybody survived. But I'm walking through the woods, and it is full moon, right? And so I'm walking up this trail in the woods. Spoiler, it ended up being a raccoon. But there was a creature off in the woods, and it scared me, and I scared it. And it went into this growling, kind of screaming, chaotic,
Yes.
like I'm going to kill you mode.
Yep.
And I
That
took off
sounds like a raccoon,
running.
all right.
I took off running up the trail. And the only thing I could think of was, if this is a werewolf, I'm dead. I've become
Oh,
part of the pack.
Jamie. Join the pack.
I am officially in the pack because I
Join
will
the
not
pack.
outrun a werewolf. It is full moon.
Oh, my word.
It's all coming to culmination right now. And I get up to the house and I'm like panting, you know, and I'm in full gear camo. And my husband looks at me and he goes, I have two things for you. Werewolves don't exist, and you have a bow and arrow on your back. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I was weaponized.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that story. You are the ideal person to interview a Christian writing werewolf romance.
Right?
That's
I know.
the best. I love it.
That was my closest run-in with a werewolf, and then there was a raccoon. But for those who don't know, raccoons are pretty deadly.
Oh yeah,
They're
they
vicious
are
little
mean.
things.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and they will not wait. They will attack. So
yeah,
I'm glad that
that's your challenge
away.
for me. For your next werewolf book, you have to somehow have a raccoon make a cameo just for me.
A raccoon. All right, I can work with this. I'm actually already thinking of a scene like, what if?
Funny. I love it. That's what I love about writers is like it's kind of like you throw out a writing prompt and then our brains just instantly go into, ooh, how could I do that? How could I do that? How could I incorporate that into a story?
Yeah, for sure.
That's so cool. Okay, so how many of the Wolfpack books do you have that are available right now for readers?
So right now, the series is called the Apex series because Apex is the name in my story world for werewolves, which don't call them werewolves. That's a dirty word in my story world.
Okay.
They're wolves. They're very extremely
I
like,
never
picky
used the
about
word
that.
werewolf. I'll put an asterisk at the end of this that I don't offend any werewolves.
I just did, so you're fine. But yeah, so wolves and vampires in my story are both considered apex, and then humans are not apex.
Right.
So the series is called Apex Moonbound,
mm-hmm.
and it is complete in itself. There are 5 books. They're all out right now. There's a little prequel novella that I also tossed out into the world. So there's a total of 6, but the first one or the 6th one, depending on when you find it, is just a little novella. It's super short.
Okay.
But those are out, and they form a complete arc. The first 3, I really think you could read them as standalones. The 4th one has a plot thread that carries into the 5th one.
Okay.
So they're not. I wouldn't call the 4th and the 5th standalones, but the first 3 are pretty much. And this is just the way my story brain works. Like, I don't do standalones really. I can even say that these are going to be standalones and something will happen and I'll be like, I have to pick that up in the next book. Oh, well. So I'm sorry to people who read the 4th one and thought it would be fully contained like the first 3, and then it wasn't, but I did my best and it wasn't going to happen. So anyway, but the 5 together, they are complete. There's nothing left open at the end of the 5th one. And then what I'm writing right now is the first book of Apex Bloodbound, which is the vampires. And there's going to be 3 of those, maybe 4, before I go back and pick up the wolfies again. Sorry, I call them that. Like,
I love it, wolfies.
It's my affectionate name for them. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it comes out of my mouth easily. But yeah, so I'll be returning to them after the vampires because there are more wolves in the pack who still need their stories told. So, and then after the second wolf sub-series, will I do more vampires? What will happen? I do not know right now. I don't have any. Once I get past that point, it's like, and then there's an open road in front of me, and I don't know what's going to happen yet. But
maybe we'll have a wolfie and vampire crossover.
Well, they do. They're part of this. They're this part of the same story world, and some of the vampires that you meet in Bloodbound, you've already met in Moonbound as very brief, like introductions that the characters just kind of drift in. And wolves and vampires are natural enemies in my story world, so my wolves don't know them super well because it's like, that's a vampire. We keep our distance.
Right.
But we've seen some of them already, so that when they show up in the second sub-series, the reader will recognize them and know who they are, and know of at least one human who is also like a connection to them. So yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh, that's
love
awesome.
making connections everywhere. Like I love doing that, all the
I kind of
threads.
wondered because if you're a series writers kind of like to do that, where
Hmm.
this thread goes over here and this, and that's what I admire. I'm not a series writer at all, and I don't know how you all do it because my brain would probably implode.
Well, I love it, but I also understand that it can be impractical sometimes not to be able to just say this book is self-contained. No, really, it
Yeah.
really is this time. It really is this time. Like
Right.
I've never really written a self-contained book in my entire life. Like I just don't, my brain doesn't do that. So even
Doesn't
though
work that
you
way.
could read the first book of the Moonbound series and you could stop, there are
Hmm.
also teeny tiny little hints that more is going on in some of the lives of these secondary characters. And because I was planting seeds because I knew where I wanted to go.
Right.
So there's always some seed somewhere that's like, is more going to come of that? And if you're
Hmm.
reading me, the answer is yes, more is going to come of whatever that was because it's just what my brain
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
For better and for worse, it's what
But
my brain does.
I think it's for better because readers like to, especially with this type of content, like the Wolfpack, the Vampire, the paranormal romance.
Hmm.
I think readers like to get in that world and they want to stay there. They don't want to just read one book and then the world is over because it is a world. So there's a lot to
Yeah.
explore, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a haunted house like mine might have, it's the whole world of new things. And like you said, there's new laws and things that even you as an author have created that you have to
Hmm.
stick with and all that. So I think
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Well, good.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Oh, super fun. So the one that I'm looking at right now is called To Challenge a Wolf, and that's book 5.
Yes,
So
that's
that's
the
the
most
last
recent
one.
release. Yep. Hmm.
Okay, and that one came out, and you got great names too, like Rhett Jones and Vivian Rossi. That's cool.
I
I like
like
it.
them. Yeah.
I like it.
And
That's cool.
it's funny because my characters tend to name themselves. I tend to
Yeah.
find the name. I can't really write until I have the name of the character.
Hmm.
And I usually can't just up and pick a name. Like they have to reveal that.
Right.
So and I don't, you're nodding like that happens to you too, which
Hmm.
makes me happy because
It does.
I know there are certain authors who they can write like a full first draft without a name. They can
No.
call somebody character number 1 and then later on they just plug it in with find and replace in edits. And I'm like, I don't know how you do that because until I
Uh-uh.
know the character's name, they are not going to tell me their secrets. So,
No, these people are like these characters. People, these characters are people, right? They
yes,
have to have a
absolutely.
name. Yeah, and
Yes.
I'm the same way. I'll have to send in every now and then a synopsis to my publisher, and I have to pick a name. I've not written the story, and I haven't even fully fleshed out the story. So I'll have a name that I thought, oh, that's a cool name. I like that name. I connect with that name. And almost 9 times out of 10, by the time I've written the book, like I'll start it and I'll get in the first chapter. I'm like, this is so not who they
This isn't
are.
right.
And
Yes.
they are like, this is who I am. Why did you give me
Yes.
that dumb name? This is my
Yes.
name.
I have a vampire in he's in book 5 actually, and he'll have his own story
Yeah.
in the coming series. But I have a vampire. I tried to name him Brian with a Y,
Hmm.
and then I tried to name him Brendan. So I was getting closer slowly, but
Right. Right.
his name is Blaine. And until I knew his name, nope, he was not going to tell me his story. He was just like, I'm not Brian. I'm not
Hmm.
Brendan. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm trying over here. Just tell me. What is your
Don't
name then?
make me come bite
Yeah.
you,
What
Amanda.
and then it's funny because some of them are hard like that to solve. And then for me, some characters, the second I like put proverbial pen to paper with them, the minute
Hmm.
I start typing, I know their name and it's
Yeah.
right. And it's absolutely right. And it's
Yep.
never a question. The alpha wolf in the first series, his name is Malachi, and I didn't know his name. And he shows up in chapter 3 or 4 for the first time in chapter 3 or 4 of the first book. And the
Okay.
minute he showed up in my main character's head, Aaron, my main male character in that series, he thought the character's name. He just said Malachi's walking toward the house. And I was like, oh, his name's Malachi? Thanks. Like, it was just
Right.
there, and I never
Right.
had to second guess it. I never had to wonder if that was right. Malachi was immediately like this fully formed character in my head and was like, yes, I'm Mel. And I was like, hi. And that was it. And then other characters like Blaine, it's like they withhold it for a little while and they make you fish
Yeah.
for it. And I think it has so much to do with the character's personality too, because
I would
Malachi
agree.
is the most honest, forthright person ever. And Blaine is all these layers of secrets. And it just makes sense that,
That does make sense.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
that
I
makes a
know
lot of
this is
sense.
all my own brain doing this, right? It's all subconscious,
Is
my
it?
own
I
brain
don't know.
creating, but it doesn't feel like that.
No, it doesn't. And they feel, no, I get you because I'm a writer. And this is why I think writers have sort of that reputation of being a little wonky, because we are essentially multi-personalities without any formal diagnosis, really, because we have all these different characters in our heads and they're real. And if you were to ask us, we can tell you their thoughts like they're trapped inside of us,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it's kind of funny because I get to thinking about that sometimes. I'm like, if someone could see inside my brain, they would probably be really disturbed by the amount of personalities that are in there. And all these characters are coming out and they're not reflections of me as an author. They're completely different.
Yeah.
I wrote one character. Have you ever written a character that you just don't like, but they're just the character and that's just who it is?
A point of view character?
Yeah.
I do have one. I do unfortunately have
Uh-huh.
one. He's a main character in my dystopian series, and he was very difficult to write, but he had to be who he was.
Mm-hmm.
He's a really important piece of the full picture of that series and the journey that everybody else goes on. And he does go on his own journey, but his journey is not really a hopeful one.
Okay.
But he did have to get point of view. He had to.
Yeah.
And he was hard to write because
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like petty, oh, I don't like you, but it was
Right.
like, you're killing me. Like,
Right.
you're making
Right.
me so upset, and you're
I
gonna
know.
do what you're gonna do. I already know what you're
Yes.
gonna do. I'm just writing it,
Yes.
and I know what it's gonna be, and I don't want it for you or anybody
Yes.
else, but I know this is
Yes.
what you're gonna do. And
Yep.
anybody who's read the Haven Seekers series knows who I'm talking about, but I'm not gonna spoil it. But if you've read that series, you know who he is.
That's so funny. I totally relate. I have one book where the main character, she was the heroine of the book, and I won't even out her because I feel like I'm betraying her right now. But I didn't like her name and I didn't like her.
Oh, that's interesting that you didn't like her name. I feel like that's significant.
Yeah, but it was her name and it was her and it was her
Yeah.
journey. And there wasn't anything, like you said, it wasn't petty. It wasn't petty. It wasn't like, I don't like you. It was just like, I don't understand why you're making these choices. This is not what I would do. And I didn't connect to her, I guess, maybe even emotionally, but whatever, her story still needed to be written. So
Yeah. There's a
now,
quote from F. Scott
yeah.
Fitzgerald that I wanted to say, but I couldn't say it without like looking it up because I wanted to get it right.
Right.
He says, writers aren't exactly people. They're a whole bunch of people trying to be one person.
Oh, wow.
I think
that is
he says,
so accurate.
There's an ellipsis in this quote. I think the full quote is, writers aren't exactly people, or if they're any good, they're a whole lot of people trying to be one person. And that always made me happy because I was like, Fitzgerald thinks I'm good.
There you go.
I'll take it, Scott. I'll take it.
There you go.
Thank you.
There you
Thank
go.
you, man. From you, I will take it all day long, dude.
He's got your back. He's got your back.
He's brilliant.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. So this is cool. So we've talked about your wolfies.
Yes.
We've talked about your vampires.
Yes.
And just to rehash it, those are written under the name Charlotte Vane, V as in Victor, A-N-E.
Yes.
And that would be paranormal romance that people can read and not worry about open door stuff. This is clean, faith friendly, but not faith focused, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. That fits. Yep.
Okay, that works. And then under your real name, let's just hop over there for a little bit here. You have the dystopian fiction, which is, you have two series, No Less Days and the Haven Seekers series.
Haven Seekers is the dystopia.
Okay. Yeah. And then the No Less Days is the one that's how would you describe that?
Contemporary fantasy featuring immortal characters.
Okay. So a little bit of Highlander vibes, but let's not say it's Highlander because it's not.
Yeah, Highlander minus there can be only one. That's not a piece of this.
And I think,
there's
like you mentioned too, minus swords and all of that stuff
no
too.
swords.
Yeah.
And there's a very there's a pseudoscientific explanation for why these very few characters. There aren't very many of them. There's fewer than 10.
Okay.
It's not like there are, because in Highlander there are innumerable dozens of people running around. But in my story, there's an actual backstory to how they became this way, and it's like pseudoscience. It's not real science. I made it up, but I had fun making it up. And
Darn.
and I stick by it. So they it's not so much a fantasy as it's almost like a pseudo sci-fi reason why they can't die.
Okay.
So so those are very difficult to categorize under a genre, as you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
But I call them contemporary fantasy because they take place in the real world, and the immortal element is obviously not real. So yeah.
Yep. Now your dystopian and this series, as well as the Wolf Pack, are not YA. They are.
No, I've never written a YA in my life, and I never will, because that is not my sweet spot. I have some very good friends who write YA, and they do a great job. And I just that is not what I am.
Not you.
My brain is wired to write adult stuff, and that's just what I write. So no YA.
And I think that's a good clarification, because some people, I don't know why, but some people just automatically assume anything in these genres are YA.
I think it's the fault of Twilight and Hunger Games, honestly, because they're the most popular examples of both, I think. Even still, though many others have been written since, I think that they're still the ones that people like immediately think of. And so it's easy to, I get how people do make that assumption. But in my case, all my characters are adults.
Right. Okay, cool. Awesome. And then in these books, are these considered inspirational then, where you have a faith thread, or are they still kind of just more faith friendly?
They are explicitly Christian. In the character arcs, there's a faith journey for most of the characters, and there is definitely, it's not like alluded to. The Christianity in those is explicit. Yeah.
So awesome. Okay, we're coming to the end. But for readers who want to follow you, since you do have two different names that you're writing under in different series, what's the best way for a reader to get to know you and your books and really get into your world?
I am most active on Instagram right now. So I would say for either name, that's probably the best place to start. I do have Facebook as well for both, but those aren't updated nearly as often as Instagram. So under my real name, I'm Amanda G. Stevens. I'm Amanda G. Stevens everywhere. So that's my Instagram, that's my Facebook, that's my Twitter, X, Wix, whatever. I'm, let's see, where else? I mean, I'm on Goodreads, and I'm pretty active on Goodreads still, even though it's starting to become unmanageable, and I'm probably going to jump to Storygraph pretty quickly. So that's that one. And then for Charlotte, I'm Charlotte Vane Books on Instagram, and also I think on Facebook. And there's I have a website under Charlotte as well that gets updated more frequently than my current one right now, my real name one right now. But there are bonus scenes on there and some fun stuff. So that's
super
a place
cool.
You can, if you're into bonus scenes and backstory and things like that, I've put some stuff up on there.
That's always fun. It's always fun to get that kind of behind the scenes look as a reader in a lot of these worlds. So awesome. Well, Amanda, this has been an absolute blast. But I don't want to keep you from your wolfies. I know you have more things.
I'm never going to live that down now that I said it aloud.
You're not. You're never going to live it down.
Forever.
It's probably going to make it into the title of the podcast.
Oh, gosh.
Join the wolfies. No. And then, you should just create a little, book club that you call the Wolfies, and then all your fans can just congregate there, and just this becomes like fandom. I can see this just exploding.
When I have enough fans, I will do that.
Okay, so everybody, go buy the books. Charlotte Vane, go buy the books so we can start a Wolfies Club, just for no other reason than me, because I need a Wolfies Club.
And also, I should say, as a good self-marketer, I should point out that all of my books are on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can read all my stuff for free. Both names.
Oh, score.
Yeah.
I just like pause mine because I haven't had time to read, so I'm gonna have to unpause the Kindle or just go buy the books. Those are fine too. So
And they're all in paperback also. Like
awesome.
they're yeah, paperback, ebook,
Okay.
and then you can read them in Kindle Unlimited if you'd
All
like
right.
to.
Yay. All right. Well, Amanda, this has been an absolute blast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
It was really fun. And then in the future, if you have those vampires out to bite you, let me know and we'll chat again.
They will be coming soon.
Okay. We'll have to have another conversation.
Sounds good.
All right.